Okay, so let's get started on part two, because now that we have at least the parts of the function and the functions connected to import and export, sorry, the modules, and then we have the functions that are then calling each other. Now it's actually time to start doing the thing we've come to do, which is to get location. Now, why do we need that? Because our local air quality, local means we need to know the user's location. Well, location, as we saw in color codes, code challenge that I gave you, was it's a latitude and longitude. So in order for us to find out the air quality, we have to have this information. And how do we get this information is through something called the geolocation. Now, what you can do here, and it doesn't hurt, I've given you the link in the instruction here to get current position, I believe, or I gave you, right, here's get current position, right? So this is ultimately the method that we're going to use. And so there's this wonderful functionality. We can say, okay, get current position, and this is going to use a callback. It's not, in this case, it will block, but we can handle that through callbacks. But what we're gonna want to ultimately end up doing, and that's what I have here, is actually returning a promise, because in that sense we can then have it wait. Okay, and for the user, and you'll see in writing this code today what happens when we call this in JavaScript. It asks you to actually allow it to get permission. Matter of fact, I'm going to need to make sure mine is blocked or not allowed, because sometimes when you do this, oh good, and right now it's on, and I'll show you as we as we get into it how we will do this. Okay. So to get started, what we're going to do here, and I've added some content here, and this is what you want to add in your data service module, is like, this is what we're doing, right? So we're going to get location. This is what I was talking about. Ultimately, we'll return it, but we're going to build this code up so you understand what it's doing, because understanding it here will lend itself to the other calls that we end up making. So in this case, what we do is first called navigator. Now, what is that? That's just part of almost all modern web browsers, okay? So it's this big object out there that has methods on it. So the method that we're going to call is geolocation. So, give me the location of the user. And in this case, we also want the current position. So geolocation, location, I want their current position. So when we call this, right, then what happens here is we end up with the callbacks. Remember, I was talking about the on success, the on error, right? So what we will get here is we're going to get position. Well, we're going to call it position. It's what's going to come back from that, okay? And so what this will be is an arrow function, okay? Oh, helps when you actually do an arrow function, Rio. It's hard to type and talk sometimes. Okay, so here we're going to get position. Okay, now we're going to have to handle in a moment also the other callback conditions, because there are going to be several that we will, at least two is on success and on error. Now we're not going to move them into their own little function. In this case, we'll just keep it in here, and you'll see why later. So for now, let's just console.log position. Okay, and what that will do is show us what comes back from running this method, and then you will see also the user interface that happens. So in here, because we're going to have, so that's our first callback, okay? So in here, this is our, when we're calling it, this is now our first callback, but we're going to have another callback. With the second callback is actually going to be the error, okay? Now what we're doing is, because we're writing arrow functions here, okay, and then we'll console.log the error. Okay, so this would just give us that basic setup. I don't have to include them. I can. We're going to end up writing some more code in here. But this, just doing this, because we are calling get location in here, Now we will see what happens. What is position? What is coming back, right? So the first on success, we should see this, and on error, we will see this. Okay, so actually, even before I got over here, because my browser is automatically, and yours should be as well, in your console, for me, it's on from line 13, I get back a geolocation, okay, which is totally awesome. That's great. So now in this case, it actually, I need to go in here. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to manage this. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to drop it. And this is what I was talking about before. And when I do that and come back here, let's see, did I drop it or did I drop it on the wrong one? Yeah, no, it should be there. Okay. So now when I come back here, what happens here is right here, and I could set actually a breakpoint to see this, but notice what happens, right? So right now the code is paused, right? And I have to respond as a user, right? And if I say allow this time, but if I say never allow, right? And this would allow while visiting this site, right? So what I typically do here is just allow, okay? So then that gives me back the successful case. Now, how could I generate the error, right? In this case, I think I have to clear that again, manage. Get rid of it. I'm going to find a way to more permanently do that. So now I'm going to do this, right? So now I'm going to say never allow. So then I get the error back, right? So the error condition is now, right, the callback. So when we're calling get current position, we have a callback. And that callback in the second position, right, is the error. So the first callback is a success. The second one is the error. So whatever we're passing it, and so what are we passing it? In this case, we're passing it a arrow function, right? So that is the arrow function, the first position in the callback for the get current position. So hopefully that at least helps you start to understand what we're going to do. Now we need to do a lot more code here, but that at least gives us the first part. So now let's actually think about what we want to do, because what we want to do here is we actually want to return a promise. Or sorry, we want to call a promise and then return whatever comes back from that promise, because we learned about promises and the wonderful benefit of being able to say when, create a new promise, we have resolve or reject, and then we can handle those two conditions. So what we will do here is we're going to say return. Now, this is going to return here, so we know we're going to need to modify this. But we're going to return, but what is going to be returned first is we're going to call new promise. Okay, so we're going to call a new promise. Okay, I'm going to actually lower this so we can see it. And in this case, we're going to call resolve and reject. Okay, so when we call resolve and reject, okay, so let's do this, because we know, based on the way we've written this, okay, we have this whole thing has to be, okay, and then here. So what, and this is just under, and by the way, this is often where I will go format selection just to make this a little cleaner so that I can see it. Okay, so when we add the promise, right, so we have passed it a resolve and a reject. We know that if it comes back resolved, what are we going to do? Okay, so in this case, we know we're going to get position. We don't necessarily now need to do this, although we could just to look at it maybe later. But what we want to do is call resolve. And what do we want to pass resolve is we want to pass it an object. And that object that we're going to pass it is going to have latitude. Okay, and we're going to, for now, hard code this. Now, you can already see me setting up a challenge here, right? And it's not a big one. It's pretty easy to find. Okay, hard code for now. Okay, so now when we resolve, okay, we're going to return, Okay, so ultimately when the promise resolves, when the user, because remember it's halted here, so it allows us to have more ways that we can handle this this thing that blocks the thread, the user thread, and that's an important thing to know how to do. Okay, so now we know we're going to do that. So down here now, right? So what are we going to do here is we're going to say, okay, actually we're still going to call, we're going to still have reject, but in this case, right? So I'm sorry, we're still going to have the callback. Let me say it that way, okay? So what we're going to do here, let me just write it, is because it's only one line, we're just going to say for now reject, okay? And then pass the error back, okay? And in this case, we also, let's see, I got error, reject. Just seeing what else I need here, because you can see that there's an error, there is a syntax error. Right. Right. Okay. So now why was that? It's because in this call, I have both the first success, and on the success, I'm going to call resolve, right, in the promise. And then on the error, I'm going to call reject. So I have to then wrap that all together, right? And then down here, so this wraps this, and then this is the beginning, you know, here's my opening curly brace for the promise, and then the promise, because, you know, this is handling the resolve and reject callbacks for us, or the resolve and reject states. Okay, so now that we have this, you know, what do we think is going to happen? Well, we're going to return a promise. Okay, now has the promise been resolved at this point, given the code that we've written, right? So first, let's just see what happens in our output. Okay, let's go here. Good. So I actually have to go here because I actually didn't allow it before. Okay, so now I'm going to go here. Cool. So now I'm going to allow it this time. I see that, right? And it looks like it actually did something here, right? But what else do I need to do? I need to come over here and say const, right? Let's just call it object. Let's call it my object for now. We're going to end up changing it. Is going to be equal to what comes back, okay? Because I'm setting you up basically for your challenge here. Is what I'm actually doing, right? And then what we'll do here is we'll call console.log, or we could just do it on my obj. Should be obj. obj. Okay, cool, right? So now we know we're returning a promise, but what's interesting is that we've given it, and let's just look. So actually it is a promise and it is pending. Aha, it's a promise pending. Why is it pending if we've given it a resolve and reject? So here's what you want to know. For now, if you get this back, you have the code correct. But what we've done is set up now the challenge, right? So at this point, what would be good is to take some time, reflect on the async promises that we've learned about, do a little research, right, around this, and then we'll go ahead and have you commit. I think I forgot to write a commit message, but by the time you get here, I'll have a commit message on here, okay? So because at this point, what we want to do is actually ask ourselves, what else do we have to do here to get the promise resolved, and what are these hard-coded values that we want back? All right, so again, look at this instruction. I'll have the commit message for you, and then we'll pick it up on the challenge, which will be next.